Ogaga was a young student at the university in Abraka, a busy town with loud streets and many students. He lived with his mother in a small apartment building where the paint was peeling and neighbours' voices could be heard through the thin walls. They didn't have much. His mother worked hard every day selling bread at a roadside stall to pay his school fees. For dinner, they often had only gari, a local cassava food, soaked in water, and on good days, they might have bread with a little butter as a treat. Ogaga joked with his mother that one day they would put ice cream on their bread like rich people did, and she would laugh and pat his head. At night, their one-room apartment was hot because the power often went out, and they would sit by a small lantern and talk about happier days. Ogaga loved his mother deeply and wanted to make her proud, but they were poor, and life felt unfair. He often went to sleep hungry, dreaming of a future where his mother wouldn't have to worry about money. Ogaga wished he could change their fortune, and he never imagined how far he would go to make that wish come true. Welcome to Royal Beat Tales, a home of interesting stories. On campus, Ogaga's friends seemed to live in a different world. Some of his classmates drove flashy cars down the city roads and wore the newest sneakers and shiny watches. They had the latest smartphones and always had money to buy food at the popular spots off campus where students hung out after classes. One friend named Femi even lived in a rented luxury apartment with air conditioning and a big flat-screen TV, while Ogaga still shared a small room with his mother and an old TV that often showed static. Ogaga was happy for his friends, but also very curious. They were all students like him, so how did they get so rich? He once joked that Femi must have a secret money tree or a hidden gold mine, and everyone laughed. But deep in his heart, Ogaga really wanted to know their secret. Each day his curiosity grew like a fire he could not put out, and he felt he had to find out the truth, no matter what it might be. One evening after classes, Femi pulled up next to Ogaga in his shiny black car and offered him a ride home. As they drove through the busy streets with horns honking and people crossing, Ogaga gathered his courage and asked softly, "Femi, how do you really get all this money?" Femi was quiet for a moment, then gave a small smile. In a low voice, he explained that he made money through something called Yahoo, which meant tricking people on the internet. He even showed Ogaga his laptop when they stopped at a traffic light. On the screen was a chat where Femi pretended to be a rich woman, sweet-talking a man from overseas to send money. Ogaga's eyes widened in shock. It was wrong and scary, but also a little exciting to learn the secret of Femi's wealth. Femi added that many students were doing the same thing and said Ogaga could do it too to make money easily. Ogaga nodded slowly, feeling both afraid and curious. He thanked Femi and got out of the car, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Femi's smile hid something more, something darker that hadn't been revealed yet. That night, Ogaga could hardly sleep because of what he had learned. The next day, he met with Femi again, eager to know more. Femi leaned in and told him there was another secret behind the biggest money gains. It was what the boldest scammers used, called Yahoo Plus, a dark way of using charms or magic along with the online tricks. He said this was how some people suddenly won big and lived like kings. Femi looked Ogaga in the eye and asked, "Are you ready to do anything to become rich?" Ogaga felt a chill at those words. He remembered his mother's tired face and their empty kitchen, and slowly he nodded, even though his heart was pounding. Femi gave a firm nod and said he would introduce Ogaga to a powerful spiritual man who helped make people rich through special rituals. The plan was set, and the following evening they would go meet this man. Ogaga's stomach fluttered with a mix of fear and excitement, because he knew this was very serious. He wanted to be rich so badly, but he had no idea he was about to open a door to a very dark world. True to his word, the next evening, Femi took Ogaga to meet the powerful man. They drove far from the campus lights to a quiet, dark part of town. Finally, they stopped at a small compound behind high walls. Ogaga's heart beat fast as they entered a candle-lit room that smelled of herbs. Inside sat an old man with cold eyes, wearing a red robe with beads around his neck. This was the native doctor Femi called Baba. The old man looked up at Ogaga and gave an eerie smile that made Ogaga shiver. In a deep, calm voice, Baba said he knew Ogaga wanted to be rich and asked if he was truly ready to do anything for it. Ogaga's palms were sweaty as he remembered his hungry days and his mother's struggles, and he answered in a shaky voice, "Yes, I am." Baba's eyes seemed to flash as he began to explain the ritual Ogaga must perform to gain wealth. As Baba spoke, the air in the room grew colder and heavier. Ogaga's heart thumped louder as he braced himself to hear what price he must pay for this wealth. Baba's voice was grave as he told Ogaga about the ritual. To get rich, Ogaga would have to do something very hard and very evil as a sacrifice. Ogaga held his breath, his hands beginning to tremble. The old man fixed a sharp gaze on him and said, "You must sleep with your mother." Ogaga's eyes went wide and his stomach turned. He couldn't believe what he heard. He felt like vomiting as the words sank in. He looked at Baba and then at Femi in horror. Sleep with his own mother. It was a disgusting, terrible idea, something he would never imagine even in his worst nightmares. Ogaga's legs felt like jelly and he stumbled back, shaking his head. I can't, he whispered, voice broken and afraid. But Baba just shrugged and said this was the only way if he truly wanted to be wealthy. Ogaga's mind spun and tears filled his eyes as he realized the horrible choice before him. His heart pounded wildly, as if it wanted to run away from this terrible fate. Ogaga stumbled out of Baba's shrine, his mind in a daze. He could hardly sleep at all. He lay on his thin mattress in the dark, staring at the ceiling and wrestling with the dreadful choice before him. In the next room, his mother slept soundly. She was innocent and had no idea about the dark plan now hanging over her. Ogaga felt like a monster just for thinking of hurting his own mother. He cried quietly, but the promise of quick wealth kept whispering in his head, refusing to let him find peace. In the morning, Ogaga's eyes were red and tired. Femi met him on campus and asked quietly if he was ready to do what was needed. Ogaga's stomach twisted with fear, but Femi reminded him that many people had done terrible things for money and that this was the price for a better life. Baba had given Ogaga a small bottle of sleeping medicine and told him how to use it so his mother wouldn't wake up. That evening, Ogaga cooked dinner for his mother and secretly mixed the sleeping potion into her cup of tea with trembling hands. He felt sick as he carried the tea to her. "Thank you, my son," his mother said warmly, not knowing it was drugged. Ogaga forced a smile while she drank it and then went to bed, soon falling into a deep sleep. The apartment was quiet, and Ogaga sat alone in the living room, shaking and holding his head in his hands. He knew that what he was about to do was terribly wrong, but he kept thinking of the better life that Baba had promised. As the clock hands inched closer to midnight, Ogaga stood up on unsteady feet. With tears in his eyes, he prepared to commit the unthinkable deed that would change everything. He waited until his mother was fast asleep. The apartment was silent, and Ogaga's heart was pounding like a drum. With shaking legs, he crept into his mother's room. The sleeping medicine had worked, she was in a deep sleep, and did not stir. In the pale moonlight that fell through the window, Ogaga did the unthinkable. He carried out the terrible act that Baba demanded, quietly sobbing as he did so. It felt like time stopped, and his heart was being ripped apart, but he forced himself to finish the ritual. When it was over, he fell to the floor, crying and whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over to his mother's sleeping form. He felt like a piece of himself died that night. Ogaga then stumbled back to his own room before his mother could wake up, and he curled up on his bed in shame and fear. He had done this evil thing, and now there was no going back. The following week, Ogaga began to see the results of the ritual. One morning, his phone buzzed, and he nearly dropped it when he saw a bank alert. A huge amount of money had been sent to his account by the foreign man Femi had been chatting with. The internet scam had worked like magic, and money was pouring in as if from nowhere. Ogaga shouted with joy, startling his mother, and he quickly told her that he got a big payment from an online business deal. His mother was surprised but overjoyed. She hugged him tightly with tears of happiness in her eyes. From that day, their lives began to change in ways they had only dreamed of, not knowing that every dream can carry a hidden cost. Ogaga wasted no time enjoying the new wealth. He bought himself stylish clothes and the latest smartphone so he could feel like one of the big boys on campus. He moved with his mother into a nicer apartment with shiny tile floors and a generator so they always had electricity. Ogaga even got a small used car so his mother wouldn't have to walk to the market anymore. They started eating good meals with meat and fruit every day, and his mother finally got to rest from her tiring street work. Ogaga loved seeing his mother smile as she relaxed and watched TV in their new home. To celebrate, Ogaga threw a party for his friends at a popular student lounge where they danced under bright lights with loud music. It really seemed as if all of Ogaga's dreams had come true and the future was bright. Yet, even as he enjoyed his new life, a tiny voice inside him whispered that something was not right. Ogaga tried to ignore it, but the uneasy feeling was like a dark cloud hiding behind the sunshine of his happiness, waiting to rain on him when he least expected it. A few months passed, and just when Ogaga thought life was perfect, his mother began to fall ill. It started with small things. She felt tired all the time and often had headaches that made her lie down early. Ogaga took her to the hospital, but the doctors did tests and couldn't find what was wrong. They just gave her some vitamins and told her to rest. Day by day, his mother grew weaker instead of better. One evening, she held Ogaga's hand with worry in her eyes and asked softly, "My son, are you sure this money you have is truly clean and good?" He forced a smile and lied. "Yes, Mama. I told you. It was from a business deal." "Nothing bad." She sighed and whispered, "All right. It's just that my heart feels uneasy and I keep having bad dreams." Ogaga swallowed hard and helped her back to bed, telling her not to worry, but he couldn't forget the fear in her voice, and it made his own heart pound in panic. That night, Ogaga heard his mother through the thin wall as she slept. She was talking in her sleep, mumbling as if she was having a nightmare. Suddenly, he heard her cry out in her sleep, asking why he did it. He leaped up, heart thudding, and rushed into her room. His mother was still asleep with tears wet on her cheeks, locked in a bad dream. Ogaga gently wiped her face and sat beside her until she calmed down, but he felt cold all over with fear. In the days that followed, even when she was awake, his mother would give him gentle warnings between her coughs. "All that glitters is not gold, my child," she said softly. "Easy money can bring great trouble. Please be careful." Each time, Ogaga nodded and tried to smile, but inside he felt a sharp pain of guilt in his heart. He started to have trouble sleeping too, haunted by his mother's words and his own secret. As he watched her grow paler and weaker each day, he sensed a dark shadow closing in on them. Ogaga feared that if this shadow arrived, it would take away everything he loved, and the feeling of doom grew stronger in his mind. Despite all the doctor's efforts and Ogaga's prayers, the day he feared came at last. One afternoon he came home from the market with groceries and found his mother collapsed on the floor by her bed, barely conscious. Panicked, Ogaga lifted her in his arms. She felt as light as paper. He rushed her to the hospital in his car, racing through the streets with tears in his eyes and begging her to hold on. In the hospital, doctors and nurses did everything they could, but his mother kept getting weaker. Ogaga held her hand tightly, hot tears streaming down his face. "Please, Mama, stay with me." "I'm sorry. Please forgive me," he begged over and over, even though he hadn't told her what he did. His mother's eyes opened a little, and she looked at Ogaga with a mix of love and sadness. With a trembling hand, she touched his cheek and whispered, "Ogaga, my boy, I love you." A single tear rolled down her face as her eyes gently closed again. The heart monitor beside her bed gave a long final beep that echoed in Ogaga's ears. Ogaga froze, then screamed, "No, Mama, no!" as he realized his mother was gone forever. He hugged her lifeless body and sobbed loudly in the hospital room, his whole world crashing down. In that instant, all of Ogaga's new wealth felt worthless. He would have given up every last naira and all his fancy things just to see his mother alive and smiling again. A mountain of guilt fell on him, nearly crushing him. Ogaga knew without a doubt that his own terrible actions had led to this horrible moment. The truth cut into him like a knife. He had traded his mother's life for money, and now she was dead because of him. This realization was more than Ogaga could bear, and something inside him broke under the weight of his sorrow and guilt. After his mother's burial, Ogaga was never the same. He stopped going to classes and avoided everyone, even Femi. In his apartment, he sat alone in the dark, talking to himself or to empty air as if his mother were still there. He barely ate or slept, and when he did, nightmares jolted him awake. Often he woke up screaming, hearing his mother's voice or seeing her sad face in the shadows. Neighbours heard him laughing one moment and crying the next. One day, Ogaga smashed his TV and threw his phone out the window because he thought he heard whispers coming from them. He stopped caring how he looked, wearing the same clothes every day. His eyes grew red and distant, and when people tried to talk to him, he would mutter about guilt and ghosts. Femi tried to visit once, but Ogaga chased him away, calling him a devil and yelling at him to leave. Everyone soon understood that the polite, quiet student they knew had truly lost his mind. Ogaga started wandering around town like a ghost of himself. He left his fancy car parked and forgotten, and he walked through the streets. Some days, he sat under a tree on campus clutching an old photo of his mother, whispering apologies to someone who wasn't there. Other days, he stood by the roadside shouting at invisible things or shaking in fear at people only he could see. His wealth and possessions meant nothing to him now. His life was broken, and his mind was shattered by grief and guilt. Ogaga had fallen completely into madness, living in a nightmare that never ended. In soft whispers, students and neighbours spoke about Ogaga's tale and the terrible price he paid for his ambition. The laughter and joy that once filled his days were gone, replaced by tears and pleas for forgiveness that would never bring his mother back. And so Ogaga wandered the city streets as a lonely, broken soul swallowed by the darkness he created. His tragedy now a scary warning to anyone who thought of getting rich at any cost. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like and comment for more interesting stories.